From WBBZ-TV Sports, it's time to beat the champ. Now, here are your hosts, Paul Peck and Sue Novoitsky.
Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to Beat the Champ from Manor Lanes in Amherst. My name is Paul Peck with Hall of Fame bowlers Sue Novoitsky and Janelle Sabin. It may be Manor 2, but it is number 1 on our list of excitement for this week. And we've got some great bowlers, not just in this show, Sue, but throughout the month here at Manor 2. It starts with Dan Gould, who makes the drive up from Jamestown to take on some top flight performers this week, including Gary Kinyon.
Well, Gary Kenyon shot 300 in the top 24, so we know he has good ball reaction. We've also got Jeff Dio, who bowls here league, so very familiar with the bowling center, and Joe Pohlman. So.
Yeah, and then beyond this week, in the next couple of weeks, we've got some big-time beat-the-champ bowlers like Tyler Molina, Chuck Jagosinski, and it's going to be pretty special. In 2 weeks, we have our first female bowler, Julie Selk, the first lady to qualify for the show.
And I'm not going to lie, I stood behind her and gave her a few pointers from being here a lot and watching qualifying for the 2 weeks it was here, and she just was amazing. Steady, made her spare. She did everything she had to do.
Yeah,
very
so
exciting.
That'll be in 2 weeks when we'll see Julie, but we're going to get it started with a good lineup today. Are you ready to go?
I'm ready. Manor 2 is a place for first, so who knows what type of first thing we're going to get here today.
Well, you're going to have to watch and find out. It's Beat the Champ at Manor Lanes in Amherst. Let's get rolling.
I'm here on Beat the Champ with our returning champ, Dan Gould. Dan, you got in as an alternate, so I guess this was all bonus for you. How did last week go?
It went pretty well. I didn't bowl the best. It was my home lanes, but I threw the ball okay. Won the match. Bowled in a new house. I'd never bowled in here before, so we'll see how today goes.
Did you get a little practice out here on the lanes?
I did. They're very tight, so we'll see how they play today. So.
Yeah, and the breakdowns will be interesting because you're coming from a synthetic surface that was actually a little bit tight, but this is a wood surface.
Yeah, the wood definitely makes a difference. That's actually, I should have brought a couple different balls with me that hooked more, and we'll see what happens. So.
Okay, well, good luck to you today.
Thank you.
Right. I'm here at Beat the Champ with Gary Kenyon, bit of a familiar face. We've seen a lot of you. We shot 300 in the top 24 qualifier. Obviously, you like what you see. Tell us a little bit about the lane condition.
On this side of the pole, 1 through 8, there's a little more ball reaction, a little more drier lanes. On the other side of the pole, they're like 6, 7 boards tighter for me. And so on this side, I was able to use my katana slash. On the other side of the pole, I get a sanded Sherlock out to get any kind of ball reaction at all, because that other side was much tighter. And so, I catch a couple doubles on the other side of the pole, and I got a couple small 200s, but I had the real good look on this side.
Yeah, so that's interesting. We'll talk about that a little bit while we're watching the bowling, but from lane to lane, side to side in bowling centers, there can be quite a difference, right?
Oh, absolutely. I was practicing recently at Airport Lanes, and lane 15 was like 5 boards drier than lane 16. And it can really make a difference.
All right, well, hopefully we see another 300 out of you, and we'll talk a little bit more about the lane thing as we go.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
It's the legendary Gary Kinyon and Dan Gould. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Jeff Dio's in match number 2. It's Gary versus Dan in match number 1 here. I should give Dan a little more credit. He made the drive all the way up here from Jamestown after winning 2 weeks ago. So, of course, Gary Kinyon, one of the legends of Western New York bowling, only making his 6th appearance here on Beat the Champ, at least in this version of Beat the Champ. He was on it about 10 times in the 80s.
Oh, he'll get to 10, don't worry.
So here we go. It's our first match from Manor Lanes in Amherst. It's Beat the Champ back in Western New York, or back in the Buffalo metro area, and Gary Kinyon gets it started off with a strike. And here's Dan Gould. As we mentioned, he was our winner last time we were at Jamestown 2 weeks ago, and interestingly enough, Sue, Dan was only the alternate for our matches in Jamestown, but one of the other bowlers got sick and had to drop out, so that allowed Dan to slide in, and he comes up with a win. And here he is up at Amherst on Beat the Champ.
Well, you got to take advantage of a good situation, and he did. And everything happens for a reason, so I guess he was meant to be here.
Yeah, it was only a 183 to 175 win over Brent Miller that got Dan Gould here. But hey, it doesn't matter how many you knock down as long as you knock one more than the other guy down. So, so that's what makes Dan here for his third appearance on Beat the Champ. The other two appearances have both been at the Jamestown Bowling Company, which is where he is from. So it's the first time Dan has made the trip to another center here in Western New York. And other than the 10 pins sticking, it's 9 pins in frame number 2.
Well, because I actually qualified or at least bowled on this condition, I have a little bit insight here to what's going on, and I'm not really guessing as much as I would be normally. That one got a little bit right on him, and more right than he would have liked to, because in this condition, the 10 board, which is the second arrow, is going to be your out of bounds. So like, you might as well treat it like it's the gutter, because in all essence it is, because if you get it out there, it is not turning around.
Okay, so it is not a house shot. It's a little bit different than a house shot. So tell everybody exactly what kind of lane oil conditions these guys are dealing with.
Well, it's not a true sports shot. It's a modified house shot, which is definitely not as difficult as a sports shot, but not as forgiving, let's say, as a house shot. And it's just a little bit more oil. All he did was add a few units of a unit of oil to the outside, and it made a huge difference on the lane.
Jim Russo likes to keep the bowlers on their toes here, doesn't he?
Well, you know what? It created a scoring condition that when people looked at it, if you were coming out here to bowl, you saw it to be an attainable number. You know, not all of a sudden the cut is immediately 700 and it becomes, you know when the cut is that high that you have to strike. It's not enough to make good shots and make your spares. You have to strike. So.
This feels like a good time to take a short break. We'll be right back with more action on Beat the Champ. Welcome back to Beat the Champ. Let's get back to the action here on WBBZ-TV.
So I'm here with Roy Kinyon. This is Gary's father, and I understand you have a story to tell us about.
Well, I started my boys off 10 dairy brands, and then I says every Sunday morning if you wouldn't smoke. So now my family's got 137 300 games.
Wow.
I keep telling Gary he better get a few more to get up his age. He's got 63 and he's going to be 68 pretty soon. So
Yeah, he's got to get one a year, right?
right.
All right, and I understand we're celebrating a birthday with you soon, right? 96?
96 this month.
Wow, congratulations. Happy birthday.
Right.
Very good adjustment. Like, he's never been here before. He's going on, whatever he got for practice time, and adapted very, very well.
Yeah, you got to use that practice. The guys obviously get a chance to practice. But, and again, we talk a lot about this on the show. The qualifier from the previous month did not have to go through all the practice and qualifying sessions, did not have to win or succeed in the top 24 roll-off. He just gets to show up, which is a negative for a guy like Dan who is unfamiliar with this center, but he used his practice time, got here early, was out able to practice, got a little bit of a chance to learn the nuances of what Manor 2 is all about. So a lot of times for that number one bowler coming into that first match, he has to overcome all of that.
Right. It's not always the advantage to be the champ when you're moving
Right.
centers.
And don't forget, the top qualifier in our round of 24 each month wins a television valued at $500 from our friends at Dirt Cheap TV. Jason Schwarzkopf was the winner of the television here at Manor 2 Lanes. Jason not able to qualify for the show, but did take the television home. So Gary, who's working 2 strikes in a row after the 2 opens, got to keep that going.
Absolutely.
And he does, 3 in a row. 5 times in the 1980s, Gary Kinyon was a winner on the original version of Beat the Champ, and it's always cool when we have guys that can remember bowling back in the day when it was not you and I sitting there, but it was Chuck Healy and Van Miller and Mike Haynes and the guys doing all the color commentary. There are still some of those matches available if you go on YouTube. I don't know that Gary's is up there, but there are still some of them up there if you want to go watch and relive some of those cool memories. And feel free to compare that broadcast to ours, and I'm sure people will let us know if they feel like we, and I don't know that we're living up to the fine traditions
it was a whole different
of
format
Chuck and
too
Van.
at that time.
And of course, the shows back then were 3-game series between
Correct.
two opponents, much different format. 4 in a row for Gary Kinyon. So, boy, when he has the 2 open frames and he struggles there, you could easily say, boy, it'd be easy to go kind of in the hole and give this match up, but not a guy like Gary Kinyon. He's going to fight till the end.
And that's one of the things I always say, and I love watching about this show, is that these are great bowlers, but regular guys with regular jobs, and still come out here and...
That one got away from Dan. Hooked too much to the left that time.
Well, he hit a dry board and it hooked on him, and
so this is
anything
a
can
very
change, right?
crucial point in this match right now. With Gary working the 4 in a row, now you've got 3 pins for Dan to try to grab here. This is not an easy pickup, and he'll get 2 and leave an open in frame number 9.
okay,
So
this
all
is
of a sudden
whole
things
different match now.
change. Yes.
This match is even. This
Talk
match
about a
is
little
even.
seismic shift here on Tonawanda Creek Road. So now, what does Dan have to do here in the 10th frame?
He has to double. Well, he has to strike out. Gary can still go 223. He cannot shut Gary out no matter what he does.
Oh, and a late slide off on the 7 pin gets Dan a first strike here in the 10th frame.
Well, the big thing here is a double forces Gary to strike on his first ball, and Dan definitely wants Gary to have to strike on his first ball, because anything a 9 count is going to be a loss for Gary.
All right, so this throw right here for Dan Gould could determine this match. There's the updated Castellan Chrysler Dodge Jeep. Well, what you're saying is that this can play a big role in putting the pressure on Gary to determine the match. Oh, and a little wobble on the 3 pin, but it won't go down. So now what does that do?
So he's going to go 204. He's still going to, it looks to me like Gary still may have to strike on his first ball.
Mm-hmm. Final throw for Dan Gould. Gets the spare, and Dan will post up the 204 final score. Is it going to be enough?
Has to strike.
On this throw.
He
He's
does
got
have to
4
strike.
in a row. Gary Kinyon needs a strike right here. Oh, he got it. That 10 pin did not look like it was going to go down.
What? Just love watching this show, doesn't it? It's just as interesting for us to watch this and watch these guys compete on this level.
What a great reaction from Gary, too. Generally, he is not a particularly animated bowler, but knowing the stakes at the key on that one, you saw about as animated as Gary's going to get.
Gary was down 45 pins in the 5th frame.
Another one.
And that just tells you how anything can happen.
6 strikes in a row after being down those 45 pins.
Amazing comeback by Gary.
Wow. So that's what makes him a Hall of Famer. That's what means he's seen it all, done it all, understands what he has to do in a pressure-packed situation, doesn't get flustered by it. That's kind of the difference between a guy who's been doing this for 56 years at the highest level.
And he'll get to do it again.
And yes, he will. So what a comeback for the ages here on Beat the Champ, and what a way to finish it out with a 7th consecutive strike. The old grizzled veteran Gary Kinyon shows us all how to do it. Not as pretty as he might have liked, but you know what? It's a win. That's all that matters. Gary Kinyon advances on. Next match against Jeff Dio. And we'll talk to Dan Gould when Sue and I return to Beat the Champ right after this. An epic comeback by Gary Kenyon gives him the 223-204 win over Dan Gould. Never good to be on the opposite end of an epic comeback. But take me through what's going on. You have a 45-pin advantage when Gary's struggling in the middle of the match. What happened for you from there?
Well, the left lane, lane 5, really started to hook on me, and I got a bad break in the 9th frame, and the right lane started to hook. They just started to break down a little bit. And it's the breaks of the games. I mean, he had a hell of a comeback there. Ooh, I can't say that. But
it's true.
He had a heck of a comeback, and he won the match. It's a 7-in-a-row bagger. I mean, so he did pretty good.
Yes, he did. So Jim Russo from Manor 2 Lanes here. I know Dan feeling great now, but do what you can.
Dan, we give you a little consolation prize, and I'm sure you'll be back to
absolutely.
compete again next month.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Good to see you in somewhere other than Jamestown.
Right,
Hopefully
yes.
that will
Yeah.
continue. So match number 2 as we continue on Beat the Champ is coming up next.
I'm here on Beat the Champ with Jeff Dio. Jeff, I know you've made a few shows out here, but you bowl league here as well, so can we call you the hometown guy?
Yeah, I usually bowl pretty good here. Shot 800 here this year and a couple other big scores. So.
Did you see a difference from your league condition to the qualifying condition?
Yeah, this was a little tougher. The oil was a little flatter, not as much hole in the middle. So.
I got to be honest, I bowled on it as well, and I saw a little bit of a difference too, and they were definitely challenging.
Yeah, I found a good look. It took me my second chance qualifying to find something, and then just never looked back after that.
All right, well, we hope to see more of that today. Good luck to you.
All right, thank you.
It's Dio and Kinyon in match number 2 here from Manor 2 Lanes as we get off and rolling for a month-long stay here at Manor 2 Lanes in Amherst. So Jeff Dio, who is no stranger to this show, no stranger to bowling throughout Western New York, and probably no stranger to bowling against Gary Kenyon, will start things off here, and that's a little bit of a strategy already at play by the aged veteran there, Gary Kenyon. He's trying to get in Jeff's head already.
Absolutely, because this is...
We're already seeing that lane 5 has been the trickier of the two.
Right, and we've been doing this so long, we've seen that where one lane breaks down a little bit differently than the other. And in this case, 5 is the challenge because it hooks more. And
I'm waiting for the show when either neither lane is worse than the other, or they're both good, or they're both bad. Because every show we always are talking about one lane generally being worse than the other.
well, not only does every lane have its own characteristics in a house, even though you oil them the same, but we've talked about where open bowling is and that how many lines are on each lane affects how it breaks down, how it wears. And in this case, 5 could have just had more practice balls on it.
And a strike to start off for Gary Kenyon, who hit 7 in a row to end the last match. So that's overall the 8th consecutive strike for Gary Kenyon, but a good start to this match.
And we talked a little bit in the first match about him choosing a little duller of a bowling ball, but he has not gone off that bowling ball. He has adjusted and made that work. If it means a little bit more ball speed, if it means a little bit of a different angle to the pocket, he's making that ball work.
Because he's such a veteran and because he's so smart about all those other factors, does that kind of figure into him saying, I can make my ball work instead of changing my ball?
Sure, absolutely. It's not just the bowling ball that makes a difference. You can do little tricks with your hand. You can do tricks with your eyes. And this man practices like he is the picture perfect idea of a bowler that practices. He works and works and works. So he just figured it out by himself.
And he has got it figured out with 2 strikes overall, 10 in a row now, or make that 9 in a row. And Jeff Dio is making his 5th appearance here on Beat the Champ, an overall record of 3 wins and 4 losses. Last time we saw him on Beat the Champ was up at Malwitz's Island Lanes on Grand Island for the November shows back in 2017. So again, Jeff's been a pretty steady performer on the show. Hasn't been able to string together a lot of wins. This would be his chance. And good pin action knocks the 7 and the 8 down for Jeff's first strike.
And sometimes bowling here and being familiar with what you think happens here doesn't always need to have to be an advantage. He bowls league here, he bowls league here on Wednesday nights, but because they modified this shot a little bit, it can not necessarily be an advantage that you bowl here.
It really isn't. You may walk in here going, I know this place, I know everything about this place, but if the oil pattern is different and you're on different lanes, that's what's always interesting about bowling. There really is not a home lane advantage, is there?
Great. No.
Now, what was the adjustment?
He moved way in. His feet he was very deep on that lane. So he's moved everything in, his eyes in, everything in, and the strip of oil is just a little bit deeper, and he found it.
Gary Kinyon bowls regularly in 3 leagues around Western New York, at Alley Brandt Lanes, in the U.S. Postal League, at Transit Lanes, in the Bowler's Choice Pro Shop Seniors League, and at Alley Brandt Lanes in the Empire Coating League, and those are all 3 of our Beat the Champ venues. And the strike run continues. That's 10 in a row for Gary Kinyon over the last 2 matches.
Great shot there.
Now, I want you to break down, Gary, anybody that's watched Gary on this show knows he's very deliberate. Is that a nice way to say? But break down a little bit about the setup from Gary, because it never changes. If you bowl against him, you might wish it changes and speed him up a little bit, but it never changes.
No, and he doesn't really care what anybody else thinks. He does what he does.
He doesn't have to.
And it is, many bowlers have their same setup, takes the same amount of time. He drops it a little bit, drops it a little bit more. For whatever the reason, his hand does not swell in that bowling ball. A lot of times if your hand's in a bowling ball that long, it'll actually stay on your hand too long, but not him.
And anybody that gives him any grief about being slow, he can just turn to him and ask them, how many Hall of Fames are you in?
No, he doesn't care, you know.
I'm in 3, at least 3. How many are you in?
He's taken a lot of flack over the years for that, and he doesn't let it bother him.
Bowlers are not the most patient of personalities?
You know, everybody has their thing, and if you don't like it, jump up ahead of him and go before he goes.
And no hook at all on that one from right to left for Jeff, so he missed the head pin and hit the 3, and it stayed straight, and that leaves him with a clump there in the middle and the 10 pin
It's
hanging
basically
up
a washout without the 8. But
so he's looking at the 1, 2, 10 here.
We talked about this at the top of the show, and honest to God, it took us to the second match to see it.
Oh, that was slow motion, but he at least got the 10 pin to come down with a little kiss on the 10 pin.
When I mentioned that about the 10 board was going to be out of bounds, you cannot go left to right and miss outside of 10 and have the ball recover. And because these players are down and in, they don't tend to make that mistake. Their eyes go to the left. Their ball reaction they don't miss to the right.
All right, good bounce back for Jeff after the opening 4. He comes back with a strike in 5.
We're going to be back with more Beat the Champ bowling action in just a minute. Welcome back to Beat the Champ.
I mentioned that we mentioned the qualifying, and remember, the top qualifier in each round of 24 every month here on Beat the Champ wins a television valued at $500 from Dirt Cheap TV. We will move on to the Tonawanda Bowling Center for next month's series of qualifiers and competitions after we get done a month from now here at Manor 2. And lots of pin collisions in the middle there for Jeff Dio, but the 7 pin not part of that.
Right, that was a rough break for him because it was a good shot. He needed the strike. He's down 44 pins, and another pin came up, and the pin that was coming across to take that 7 out, it got stopped by, just bad pin collision.
Oh, he missed it. Jeff missed the spare pin. So that's another open after 1 and 4. This is 1 and 6 now for Jeff Dio. Again, we're here for the next 2 weeks after this week with competitions here at Manor Lanes. As we talked about in the open of the broadcast, we've got some great bowlers coming up. Next week, Tyler Molina, Chuck Jagosinski, and then in 2 weeks, we have our first female bowler, and we're excited to see Julie Selk be on the show. And then we're really excited for our final show. Technically won't be here at Manor 2, but it'll be a special show recapping the Obenauer Masters Final. So we're really excited about that. The Obenauer just recently concluded. We're going to sit down and take you through the final match of the Obenauer with some analysis and give everybody a really good feel for, we like to think Beat the Champ is the biggest bowling deal in Western New York, but we all know it's the Obenauer Masters, so we're excited to mix the two of them together.
Right. We thank Jim for giving his fourth show up for that, because it's up to the proprietor of the bowling center what to feature on their fourth show, and Jim chose to highlight a tournament that we talk about all the time, because we mentioned with all our bowlers where they finished in that, because the best of the best show up for that tournament.
Yeah, a guy like Gary Kinyon has been bowling in the Obenauer since 1784. I don't believe Gary's ever won the Obenauer. As great as his career has been, he has not. He has been a runner-up in 1984 and has also runner-up in 2000.
Wow.
And that little split was a bigger challenge than you might have thought for Gary, because that leaves him with an open in the 7th. So both guys struggling a little bit here in the last couple of frames.
Well, 4-9, they're playing so deep on the lane, and they're looking for that high flush hit, that a 4-pin, a 4-9, a 9-pin are going to be some of the leaves that we're going to see with their angle to the pocket. And he'll just brush that off and go. He's looking at really having to get to 224, because the highest that Jeff can post is 223, and that's if he throws the next 5 after the strike that he has up in the 7th. Great shot.
So like a true pro, Gary Kenyon bounces back from the open with a strike in the 8th.
If Gary just spares out for the next 2 frames in the 9th and 10th, he doesn't even have to double. He'll get enough to win, even if Jeff strikes out. But you know, we've seen anything happen, and we have to watch it
5 minutes
play
ago,
out.
we saw anything happen. 8th frame now for Jeff Dio. Pressure's on him to knock some pins down.
Great
shot. That's the way to do it. That's 2 in a row for Jeff Dio. Winner of this match will take on Joe Pohlman in our final match of the day here from Manor Lanes. Completed our little tour of the southern tier there with trips to Fredonia and Jamestown, and we love going down there. Great hosts down there in the southern tier. Jim at Jamestown, Paul at Fredonia's Lucky Lanes, great hosts for us. But now it's always good to be back right here in sort of the metro Western New York, Buffalo area. We'll be here for most of the rest of the summer. 3 in a row for Jeff Dio. And of course, even though the bowling generally slows down in the summer months, we do not. This show continues to run all year around.
And a testament to the show is that this was the qualifiers here in May, when all the leagues are over, was close
over
to
180
200.
bowlers.
That's right. And that's been one of the highest ones of the year. So, you know, it's good tournament time for everybody, but it's good that even after leagues are over, people are still bowling.
They all just want to meet you. All the bowlers. They want to
well,
come
I was
meet
here every day, just about.
8th frame, 9th frame for Gary Kenyon.
Big shot.
And that's a big strike for Gary. Continuing to match those strikes from Jeff Dio. Gary looking for 2 wins in a row here. There's the updated Castellone scoreboard.
So Gary needs a spare here. A spare here will decide the match.
So Gary Kenyon with a nice little run going on here. As we mentioned, as good a bowler as he is, he's never been able to put a lot of wins together on this show. And it looks like Gary's found a nice little groove here. And that started with the 300 in qualifying, and certainly has moved into the competition here. A strike will clinch this one for Gary Kenyon. And it does. So Gary Kenyon wins his second match in a row. A little less dramatic than it was the first time around, but I don't think he'll care. It's a win and a chance for Gary Kenyon to complete a weekly sweep here at Manor 2 Lanes. We'll get you ready for that attempt against Joe Pohlman when Sue and I return to Beat the Champ. Gary Kinyon advances on with a 244 to 205 win over Jeff Dio. When you're bowling against a guy like Gary, and you've bowled against him a lot in your career, how do you have to approach your opponent knowing that he's seen it all, done it all, and there isn't anything that's going to faze him?
Yeah, you know there's really nothing that's going to faze him. You just have to worry about your own game and just do what you can and let the rest take care of itself.
What was the challenge on the lanes for you today?
I threw a couple bad shots, missed an easy spare, and then he started with 5 or 6 in a row, and so I was already behind from the beginning.
Right. Are any questions on the lanes? Take it up with this guy.
Yeah. Jeff bowls here on a regular basis, so we have a lot of conversations about the lanes.
Yeah.
But when you're going against a guy like Gary who strings them along like that, not a whole lot you can do other than stay with him, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, Jeff Dio is always fun to watch when he bowls. That may wind up coming back to you at some point, Jim. No? All right, good. Good call on your part, Jeff. So we'll see if Gary Kenyon can complete the sweep when we return to Beat the Champ.
I'm here with the Pohlman of the month, Joe. Bowled well this week. And tell us a little bit about this lane condition.
Yeah, it's certainly a more challenging shot, which made it a lot more fun. Took me a couple attempts. The key for me was trying to find an angle to the pocket that didn't leave splits, didn't leave tough spares to make. Once I found that, I relaxed my shoulders, everything started to fall, and it worked out. But it was definitely more challenging.
Right, because I did bowl on it myself, and this was a modified house shot, which we'll talk more as we bowl, or as we go on it rather, and watch you guys bowl. But I found them a little bit challenging. So where are you going to start on the lane so we can talk about it while we bowl?
Well, hopefully I'm going to start a little left to center. I'm just going to try to stay. I'm not trying to get past outside of 10 with my shot. I'm trying to stay tight. I'm trying to stay high flush pocket. Trying to keep the ball, if worst case scenario, maybe I'm leaving a 4-pin, easy to pick up, and then get back on it and adjust my feet just slightly, little subtle moves.
Okay, interesting tips there that we'll focus on a little bit more as the bowling goes on. Good luck to you today.
Thank you very much.
It's Joe Pohlman who will try to knock off Gary Kenyon in our third match of the day here at Manor 2 Lanes in Amherst. And the way Gary is bowling, it's going to be a challenge for Joe, but Joe has been up to the challenges before as we continue our what seems like having one of the Pohlman brothers on the show almost every month, right? Either Jeff or his brother Jeff or Joe, because they are two outstanding bowlers. That never turned is the technical way to say that.
That's where I said that 10 was might as well be the gutter. He missed right at 10, and that's a no-no on this lane condition.
Right. 9th appearance on Beat the Champ for Joe Pohlman, 7-6 overall record. We haven't seen Joe in a couple of months. Last time was at Batavia, Mancuso's bowling center in December of last year. And when he was bowling in Batavia, he was one of the victims of Dana Vojtovic's 11-match winning streak. And there's a little way to bounce back from a bad first throw.
Joe's mom is going to be on her guard now.
Because
we don't put her reactions on television.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, as both Joe and Jeff have rotated being on the show, what the staple is always that the Pohlman parents are always here. So Sandy and Joe are almost always in our studio audience.
Don't want to see the Sandy flop.
So here's Gary coming off that impressive first 2 matches and getting started in an equally impressive way. Now, Gary said something interesting to you towards the end of the last match. You brought this up, and I think it's something that bears watching. It's a little warmer. We're in the summertime, or we think we're in the summertime around here. He's already said he's had some issues with his thumb, swelling a little bit and sticking in the ball. So is that something to watch?
Well, Gary's kind of got to be a little bit used to that, because I said the longer you leave your hand on the ball, the more your hand's going to swell, and that's going to happen to anybody. So for him, he has something else he focuses on, which is his left hand, which we'll keep an eye on that. But as a bowler, I myself have never paid attention to where my left hand is in the approach. But another nuance that I guess can be a part of someone's game is where that ball is balanced on your left hand.
Okay, so to describe it as we're looking at, watch the left hand. I want you to sort of take us through what you think it's doing there.
So right now, he's down there to the bottom of the ball. Earlier, his hand had creeped up to the top of the ball. So it was dropping his shoulder, because it rolled over the top of the ball, dropped his right shoulder, affected where the ball goes. Because if you drop your shoulder, the ball's going off to the right. So by balancing his hand, putting the weight of the ball on top of his hand, it kept his hand steady because it didn't roll over to the top of the ball. So something interesting, that if you do rest the weight of the ball in your left hand, it would matter.
So the use of the left hand for Gary is almost to benefit the right hand in this case.
Correct. He says in his game it's very critical. Now,
doesn't want to put any more undue stress on his bowling hand.
For a lot of bowlers, their left hand just steadies the ball. They're not putting the weight of the ball in your left hand. So it depends how you balance the weight of that ball in your right hand. For most people, it's more of a guide. It's not a weight bearing.
So spares in the first two frames for Joe Pohlman, 47 years old, from East Amherst, an elementary school teacher in Williamsville, and also a bowling coach in Clarence on the girls' varsity team.
Right.
There's Janelle Saban of the Castellone Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram scoreboard with the early scores for the first two frames. 225 overall average for Joe Pohlman. That comes from bowling regularly 3 nights a week. Mondays in Clarence, Wednesdays at Transit Lanes, and Saturdays in the Travel League. And a little bit of a late fall there gets Joe his first strike.
The action will continue on Beat the Champ in just a minute. Welcome back to Beat the Champ.
He's a bowling coach and a school teacher, so I guess it's working.
I was going to say, he has passed on some of the priorities of his life onto his kids, which is great. And there's another one for Joe Pohlman.
That gives Joe a 32-pin lead halfway through.
And there you get the updated score as we move over to Gary in frame number 7. Good strike for Gary. That's 2 in a row. Continuing to put the pressure on. Don't forget, top qualifier in the round of 24 at every monthly stop of Beat the Champ wins a television valued at $500 from Dirt Cheap TV right down Niagara Falls Boulevard from where we are here at Manor Lanes II in Amherst. And the next month of qualifying comes up at the Tonawanda Bowling Center. And that gets started on the 8th, 9th, and 10th of June.
Right, he's just choosing to go 3 days, 8th, 9th, and 10th. So you can check the website for the exact times.
Of course, so the Facebook page at Beat the Champ always has all the latest information as well. And that one seemed to slow down dramatically. Didn't hit the pins with a lot of force.
Well, Gary missed a little bit right on that.
Yeah, leaves Gary with a couple of staring back at him.
haven't seen Gary miss his target too much. Gary's pretty accurate. In fact, he's very, very accurate. Misses target a little bit to the right on that. Can't do it on this particular condition.
Good spare for Gary in the 8th frame. So now Joe Pohlman moves to the 8th, working 5 strikes in a row. You made a very funny joke about it's the Pohlman of the Month club here on Beat the Champ. And between Joe and his brother Jeff, this is the 18th appearance for the Pohlman brothers on Beat the Champ. And for those of our fans that go all the way back to when we brought the show back in 2016, Joe was the first winner of the first weekly show. He won the 3rd match of the first show up at the Rapids Bowling Center. At the time when we celebrated the weekly wins a little bit, it was Joe Pohlman that was the first weekly winner here on Beat the Champ. That not necessarily a winning shot for Joe. Didn't care to see that pin not go down.
Well, the great thing is Joe and his brother Jeff support the show every single month. They show up to the qualifiers, and there's a reason why we see them, and that's because they come and they bowl generally until they make it.
And 6 pin goes down, and the spare in the 8th frame for Joe Pohlman. So we're getting down to the end here. How is this one shaping up? It's still close.
Well, it's 33 pins.
Okay.
And
we're not that close.
We're running out of frames here.
Right.
But Gary has a maximum score of 225. So if he strikes out the rest of the way, he'll score 225. So Joe's got 190 in the 8th, so he needs a spare, good count.
Okay. So in control here for Joe Pohlman.
Still got to get to 226. That's his goal.
4 pin will not allow the strike to happen in the 8th frame.
So if he makes this spare, he needs 9 pins. He doesn't even need to spare, but he's still going to need good count. So Gary's going to go up there and make him show up for the 10th frame.
Put the pressure on him. That's what Gary Kinyon does. Probably better than anybody.
Important spare though, and when there's a lot of oil in the middle of the lane like this, I don't want to jinx anybody. When there's a lot of oil in the middle of the lane, so going those cross alley spares to the left can be challenging.
So let's see if Gary can pull another one out of his hat. He'll need strikes the rest of the way here in the 9th frame. And regardless of that, it's always fun to watch Gary on our show here. And again, the chance to put one of the legends of Buffalo bowling on TV is an honor for all of us at Beat the Champ.
Great shot right there.
Pretty good chance with the likelihood of us heading up to Lockport at least once, if not twice, before we're done for the year, that we'll see Gary back on this show no matter what happens in this match.
Well, I'm doing the quick math on this, and if Gary strikes out, he will force Joe to spare to win. If Joe comes up and goes 9 miss, it'll be a tie. So all of these strikes are important, including the count on the 3rd shot if he does double.
10th frame for Gary Kinyon. Can he finish off a weekly sweep? And that will not help. The 6-10 won't go down for Gary, and that's going to likely clinch the win here for Joe Pohlman. It does clinch Joe Pohlman's victory over Gary Kinyon. So it's Joe Pohlman that will come back for next week's show. We'll talk to Gary, we'll talk to Joe, we'll get you ready for next week's show when myself, Sue, and Janelle return to Manor 2 Lanes in Amherst. You're watching Beat the Champ. 245 to 203 is our final score as Joe Pohlman defeats Gary Kinyon. You were consistent in making the spares, but he was making the strikes early in the match. Was that the difference?
Oh yeah, the shot started breaking down on me, and so I tried to make adjustments and couldn't quite catch up to the adjustments. You know, the corner pins out, and then the lane 5 really just appeared on me, and so that was it.
It was a fun little run for you, particularly
Yes, it
that
was.
first match against Dan was pretty exciting, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I just get a lot of enjoyment out of match play and that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, we get a lot of enjoyment out of watching you bowl as well, too. I'm sure Jim feels the same way.
Yeah, and we've got a little bit of something here to make your life a little bit nicer today.
Thanks for having us here.
No problem.
Sue?
I'm going to use a phrase out of Gary's playbook here. It's not a beauty contest. A couple trip twos in Brooklyn there. It gave you a little time to figure it out, though, didn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't a pretty game, and a little nerves. I don't think it was tough bowling against Gary. It was really my first time on television bowling against him, so I wanted to do well, and I think I was squeezing the ball a little bit. Lanes were really different. Lanes were changing as we were bowling, so it wasn't pretty. Everybody knows that, but got the job done, so I'm very fortunate.
No, you did figure it out. What did you do different?
I did move my feet. I did lower my beginning. You know, I tried to lower the ball a little bit, see if it could get me my balance back. I was really not good in the beginning.
All right, well, you got more work ahead of you next week.
I do. Thanks.
I think Jim Russo thought this was a beauty contest. That's why he's wearing the very colorful shirt here today, Sue.
I make it a little bit more beautiful.
Yes, he does. Whether it's good or bad, prepare for it. Jim's going to join us for next week's show. When we know we're going to see Joe come back, we'll preview next week's show when we return to Manor 2 right after this. It's always a treat to watch Gary Kenyon bowl, and particularly that first match when you thought he was down and out, but he fought his way back. That is what's great about the sport of bowling.
I know, that's what's fun about this show, is just sitting back there and never being able to predict what's going to happen. And Gary put on a great show for us this week, and it was good for his dad to see him bowl as well as he did.
Yes, it was, and we're glad we had a chance to talk to his dad as well, too. But we know Joe Pohlman's going to be back for next week's show, which features some heavy hitters like Tyler Molina, Chuck Jagosinski, and Curtis Foss. So you're going to want to stick around for that. I know you're going to be there and keeping an eye on what is always the exciting scoreboard.
Always exciting, always ready for anything, Paul.
All right, well, make sure you're ready for anything when we join you next week. It's Beat the Champ at Manor 2. We'll see you next week.